Hi, my name is Eric Beatty, and in a nutshell, I'd like to explain to you what Bluegrass Guitar Essentials is. This is my brand new course I'm coming out with, and it's based around what I've learned throughout the years on how to play bluegrass the way the masters and the greats play it. And you'll find in this course that it's tailored to just about anybody that wants to get better at guitar. Not only bluegrass guitar, but in any kind of acoustic type of guitar, but it's geared toward bluegrass guitar itself especially. And this goes back to my influences on people like Tony Rice and Bryan Sutton and Kenny Smith, David Grier, Russ Barenberg, Clarence White, Dan Crary, Doc Watson. You could just keep going on and on naming influences. I go over some of these influences and where I first learned and heard about these influences in the course. In the course, you're going to get, and you may be wondering if this course is right for you, if this is exactly what you're looking for. Well, let's just spend a few minutes talking about what's in the course, and then you can judge for yourself. In this course, I go over some recommended gear that I recommend to use to achieve great bluegrass guitar tone, great sound. Everything from the guitar I use, not only recommended gear, but the gear that I use as well. Everything from the guitar that I use to the type of strings that I use to get that nice bright bluegrass tone, that nice sound. The picks that I use, and I do use more than one, and I describe and explain in the course why that is. You can get all kinds of different tones and sounds from multiple picks, and I use about 3 at a time depending on the situation that I'm in. I go on the type of capo that I use. I go over the type of tuner that I have installed that already came with this guitar. We go over all kinds of things, and picks, like I said, is a very important thing. I even go over, like I said, the type of tuners that you can use that are clamp-on style that you can put on your headstock. Back in the day when you had to tune guitars, you usually had to do it with a little tuner on your leg and kind of hope everybody else was quiet. Well, now things have changed, technology's gotten better, and the tuners today actually can clamp onto your instrument and sense the vibrations of the instrument. As a matter of fact, you may not realize this, but if you take and pluck a string and feel anywhere on your instrument, especially on the headstock where these tuners usually are clamped, even the little string, you can feel some vibration there. And those tuners use that vibration rather than volume to tune your instrument. So that's very interesting. We're going to go over, speaking of tuning, we're going to talk about how to tune correctly and how on every instrument it's different. On this guitar, I've got several guitars, and this guitar is tuned differently depending on my playing style and depending on the instrument itself. They're both tuned separately from each other. Usually I just do the tuner as a guideline, and then I kind of have to tweak the other strings based on my playing style, based on what sounds good to me. So we'll go over some of that in the course as well. We're also, speaking of picks and picking, we're going to go over picking and how to pick correctly, how the picking is one of the most important things that most people ignore. Most people try to focus on the left hand and what it's doing over here and all the fancy stuff. Hardly anybody pays attention to what the hand's doing over here. And it's so important to get a good foundation in your picking hand so that you can have a correct amount of control and efficiency in picking. This is essential for being able to play fast, for being able to play speedy licks. Any kind of licks like that, or any fast stuff up the fretboard. Any kind of fast, obviously that was off the cuff, but any kind of fast things like that, you're going to want to be able to use your right hand efficiently and acceptably and effectively in being able to play these licks. So we're going to go over picking and control, and also how it is that some people, when they play, they can hit that extra bass note without having to look down all the time at which note their picking is hitting. So I don't have to look down because my picking hand is so tuned and fine-tuned that naturally I know where I'm at on the strings at all time. It's important, equally as important, if not more so, because it's so underemphasized, as important to know not only where you're on the fingerboard, but where you're at in the strings. Because a lot of people have problems, they'll play a string and they'll hit the wrong string because they're not used to where their hand should be. So it's very important to know where you're at, and I go over that and cover that in the course as well. For information on that, you can go to www.bluegrassguitaressentials.com. I don't think I've mentioned the website yet, but definitely that's where you go to check out all this information on this course. Some more things that are covered in the course real quick. I'm going to go over shortcuts for navigating the fretboard. Things like short scales that you can use and short chords that get you the main part of what you need to understand, what you need to learn, that are essential in learning how to solo. You may not know this, but a lot of bluegrass guitar players do not use the whole scale shape. They'll use just a lower, like half of the scale shape, to be able to play what they're doing, because they have to move so fast and so quickly up and down the neck that they need the least amount of notes possible to have the most effective sound. So we'll go over the short versions of these scales that we're going to be learning, and short chords to help you kind of associate those scales with which chord you're playing them in. So different shortcuts for navigating the fretboard for all those who wanted to always know how to move up and down the fretboard. We'll also go over, since this course is called Bluegrass Guitar Essentials, I wanted to go over the stripped down main essential things that you need to know in bluegrass. And one of the things that this course is designed around is the 3 essential keys that most bluegrass people and most bluegrass guitarists need to know. And that's pretty much all they need to know, except in maybe very rare instances. And that is G, C, and D. And the reason for that is, if you play a G chord and you wanted to play, let's say we wanted to play in A, but we're not used to any licks or anything around the key of A. Like I don't know which, let's say I don't know which ones to use, which open string. Let's say I'm lost there, okay? Let's say I don't know what I'm doing. All I can do is, the closed stuff. But I'm not really comfortable. I don't feel like I can do a good break, good solo if I'm in a jam session or something. So what we do is we use our trusty capo. Remembering the G shape, we're comfortable with that. We're familiar with that. Let's move it up to the 2nd fret here. And I'll go over why I use a adjustable tension capo in the course as well. They're very handy and give you a lot more control than just a clamp-on style. So we go, instead of going to this A, we can go to this A. And now we are familiar with this. This is more comfortable to us. We feel like we can take a solo if we're in like a big jam session with people and it comes to our turn. We feel like we can. We feel more comfortable hopping around those strings than if we were down here in A. So that capo allows us to do that. And another essential technique on that is, as far as the 3 essential chords, if you're playing in D and you're okay, you're kind of familiar with D, but you're more familiar with, let's say, C, then you can take the capo, put it on the 2nd fret, and now we're in the D chord. We're in the key of D using the scale shape, the C chord shape. Okay, so now we're more familiar territory. So I go over why that is. That's essentially it. But there's different techniques and everything in each one of those chords. So the three essential keys being G, C, and D. Like I said, except for in rare instances when they're playing a song in a minor chord or something like that. The other things we're going to go over are some essential chords and rhythm that relate to the key of G. You can get, we have these regular chords, G, C, and D, but there's also other chords like the 7th chords. Some good chords like what's commonly known as an 11th chord. Some nice chords that you can get into as well for a more bluesy sound, such as 9th chords. And some very pretty chords to end on, such as this one, which is a G add 9. Okay, so we'll go over common and uncommon chords, and we'll go over some different rhythms, some very simple rhythms for those of you that may have problems. This is what I would probably call a beginner section, in that the chords is more beginner friendly. The rest of this material is mainly geared toward intermediate to advanced players, those of you that have been playing for maybe a year or more and are comfortable with the basic mechanics of changing chords and kind of strumming a little bit, and just need some, some standard bluegrass strums. I'll go over some of those in the course. So we go over common and uncommon chords, some rhythms, and some songs that I have picked out that I feel that convey the essence of everything we have learned up to that point. The songs are closer to the end of the course because I wanted to get everything else as a good foundation for you to kind of expand and be ready to play full-on songs. I cover some instrumentals in there, some fiddle tunes, some good gospel songs, and some original songs, one of which I wrote. So we go over that, and we'll also go over some practice tips. I went over this if you're familiar with my Secrets of Texas Blues Guitar website at www.secretsoftexasbluesguitar.com. I created a course a few years back called Texas Blues Guitar. And I felt that a lot of DVDs and a lot of courses hadn't dealt with practice very efficiently. And I wanted to bring that to the forefront. And I bring that again to this course, and some different practice tips that you can use for getting the most out of your investment, such as practicing with a metronome, being patient and disciplined enough to practice with a tool that really helps you stay in time and keeps you from crashing and burning. Not only is this help for the left hand, but once again, for picking, it is a tremendous help to stay fluent and to stay on time and on beat every time, so that you are not, out of sync or anything when you speed things up. You start slow with a metronome, then you speed things up. Some other practice tips: setting goals for yourself. What do I want to accomplish in this practice session? What do I want to learn? Maybe I want to learn a short scale. Maybe I just want to start with one. Maybe I want to learn 2 of them. That way I can go back and forth between 2 of them. Maybe I want to learn a lick and just focus on that lick over and over again. Just cycle it over and over again until I get used to it. Maybe I want to learn, all these different techniques, and I'll go over some tips and how you can set goals for yourself so that you're not wasting valuable, precious practice time. Because one of the things that's very important is when you go to a jam session and you mess up, don't get down on yourself. Take that experience, bring it back home with you on the next practice session. Make that your goal to say, whatever this song was I messed up on, I'm going to practice that goal and practice that song, and then I'm going to take it back to the table. I'm going to forget all the stuff I practiced, and I'm going to just have fun and let myself go on autopilot. That's very key. A lot of people are so worried about what's going to happen when they get in the jam session. The time to worry about it is not during the jam session. It's before the jam session. The time to worry about it is when you're practicing on it, so that when you get in that jam session, all worries are off. You don't have to worry about anything. You just play. Do the work at home. Do the work in private, so that when you're in public, in front of your audience, in front of your friends and your family, in front of your fans, you can have fun. Okay, that's one of the great things about Bluegrass Guitar Essentials and some of the practice tips that I go over. Also, one little thing that I go over is the most important scales to learn if you're short on time. This is going to be a very extensive course. It's going to be upwards of 6 discs or more, in my best estimate. And so you may buy this course and yes, you definitely want to get through it, but there's so much to learn and it's so much value for what you've paid for it that you still want to learn quick. And I'm not going to say you practice quick. I'm not going to say throw the metronome away and just ignore going slow. I'm going to give you some scales and some things that will help you to kind of condense it down so that you can start right away in wherever you're at in your playing. So you can say, here's what I need to practice. Instead of learning all the scale shapes, I'll just do this, or instead of learning all this, I'll just go along with this. So I'll give you the most important things to learn first, the most important scales to learn first if you're short on time and you want to start implementing some of this stuff right away. That's the good thing about this. If you want to, you can't have an essential course without being able to get started right away, okay? And the very last section we'll go over are some licks. And once again, we'll be basing those off the keys of G, C, and D. So anywhere you're at on the fretboard, if you're playing capo 2, G for the key of A, or C for the key of D, or wherever you're at, and that's kind of confusing, but if you play and put the capo on the 2nd fret and play a D, you have your D, you have your E right there. So we go over different licks in the G, in C, in D, so many kinds of licks, and there's licks of all the licks that I could think of. I don't exactly know the number, but there's a bunch of them. There's all the licks that I could think of on the top of my head to give you in each one of those chords. Some of those things, not only we're going to talk about licks, but we're going to talk about ways to think about licks. Like there's cool little things, little shortcuts like the 1st fret pull off. We're going to talk about how to use the 1st fret pull off and how it is one of the essentials in learning bluegrass guitar. Really, a lot of people don't really think about the 1st fret. They ignore it. They're so used to the 2nd fret that they kind of ignore the 1st fret and think, well, this sounds good and I'm going to stick with that. But the 1st fret is key if you want to have a nice bluesy bluegrass tone. Especially in minor keys. In D or D minor, that same pull-off applies. So some cool techniques like that, some open string transitions we're going to go over. Some little exercises to get you from one area of the fretboard to the next. It was a while before I recognized how they're doing that, and I learned from some of the greats like Tony Rice and Bryan Sutton that open strings are very important in learning licks in connecting the higher areas of the fretboard to the lower areas. If you just use 1 or 2 open strings, it will help you shift from the high to the low areas, and that's very important so that you don't feel like you have to always have your fingers on the fretboard and always have something connected to the previous notes. I mean, that's very important in the sense of being able to play and knowing where you're at on the fretboard is knowing that you don't have to have every single finger down every single time. It's all about flexibility. When you're playing bluegrass guitar, you've got to be flexible. You've got to use everything that you know to your advantage. And the open strings are very important in that. A lot of people ignore those, but the open strings are your friend, okay? So we talk about open string transitions. And one of the last things that we talk about in the lick section of Bluegrass Guitar Essentials is how to combine the scales together using what I call diagonals. And I went over this in the Texas Blues Guitar thing, but I felt that it was necessary to go over in this as well. A lot of people, and I know when I was first starting out, when it comes to bluegrass guitar, a lot of people don't really realize that you can use closed strings. Problem is, with me, when I first started learning this, I was always hung up on having to use closed strings every single time. I was always worried about, I can't use closed strings. I can't use all these scale shapes because it doesn't sound as good. It's not as loud. The volume's not as loud. as the rest of the notes that I'm playing. They're not as loud as these open string notes. So I'm not really allowed to use, you know, closed strings or strings where I have to put my fingers on the fretboard. That's very opposite to the truth, though, because when I begin to watch players like Tony Rice and Bryan Sutton, Dan Crary, when they get up here high on the neck, they use all this fretboard here. They use all the strings that they can, and they do play in closed positions a lot of times. They don't have to feel like they have to use these open string legs like... There's a lot of open strings used there, but when you're using diagonals, it kind of connects you. It connects you from one end of the fretboard to the next, to another end of the fretboard, without the aid of open string transitions. So you get the best of both worlds in that. Once again, you don't have to worry about, I can't use all these scale patterns because it won't sound as right. It won't have the nice volume. Because 9 times out of 10, you're going to be, when you're playing, either in a jam session, well, maybe not in a jam session, but when you're playing live, you're going to be mic'd up. So there will be enough volume there. There will be enough volume there to play those closed string positions. And the diagonals help very well with getting up and down the fretboard. So thanks for staying tuned to the end of this video, and I hope you've enjoyed Bluegrass Guitar Essentials in a nutshell on this video. Please be sure to check out the website at www.bluegrassguitaressentials.com and make sure to reserve your copy today.